Sleep regressions are something that almost every parent and carer of a baby will think about and indeed experience at some point within the first 2 years of their life. Today I'm going to be answering your sleep question. How do I know my baby is going through a sleep regression, and what can I do to get through it? Hi, I'm Jen. I'm Little Ones Village team leader. I'm mother to Carrick and to Heather. Little Ones have helped over 200,000 families worldwide with their Little Ones baby sleep challenges, and we'd love to help you too. If you have a look on this channel, you'll find links to our website where there is much more in-depth information on the sleep programs that we offer and the help that we can give you. So take a look. It's www.little.ones.co. That'll take you directly to our website and all the information that's within. If it's your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you hit the little bell button, you'll be notified when we release any new sleep related videos. Okay, so let's talk about the sleep question today, which is how do I know my little one is in a sleep regression and what can I do to get through it? Let's start by covering the different ages that sleep regressions occur. And then once I've done that, we'll go into a bit more detail about what those sleep regressions look like, why they happen, and how we get through and out the other side of it. So the first sleep regression that happens is around 8 weeks. This sleep regression is actually all about your maternal melatonin wearing off of your baby. So 8 weeks from birth, it's not 8 weeks corrected age. So 8 weeks from birth, all the maternal melatonin that your baby had is now completely worn off. And this is when your baby can look much more alert and they've really lost that sort of sleepy newborn phase that they've been in. So what does the maternal melatonin wearing off mean? Well, it can lead to catnapping. So where your baby wasn't before, you might see them catnap. What can help this is having a really super duper dark room for sleep. And the reason for that is because melatonin is the sleep hormone that helps us go to sleep and helps us stay asleep. And that hormone is produced in the dark. So the darker the room, the better. So what you can do to help your little one here is encourage them to stay asleep. So you've got the dark room. What you want to be doing is, if they're waking up quite soon after falling asleep, so after a sleep cycle of 30 to 40 minutes, actively resettle them when you want them to sleep longer so that they get used to sleeping longer at those particular points in the day. Most often it's the lunch nap, which is the longer nap of the day. And that's the one you might have to do a little bit of work on to encourage them to stay asleep and for their body clock to adjust again to that longer stretch of sleep and become used to it. Between 3 and 6 months, and I'm saying 3 and 6 months because the 4-month regression can happen actually earlier than 4 months or later than 4 months. So between 3 and 6 months, we hit the 4-month regression. This is the big regression that most people talk about. It strikes fear into the hearts of all. And it can have you really worried. Don't worry about it, because you can come through the other side of this with some gentle sleep training. But briefly, what the 4-month regression is a complete maturation of your baby's sleep. It becomes the same as our sleep is as adults. And what that means is it completely loses its instinctive nature. So that sort of drive that your baby had before, which was, I'm sleepy, I am going to fall asleep, we lose that. Sleep becomes a learned behaviour. So your little one, in order to fall asleep well, needs to know the how of falling asleep. What also happens in the 4-month regression is their sleep cycles fully mature. So they become 45 minutes in the day, and overnight, after one first 45-minute sleep cycle, they are 2 hourly. So within the regression, and when it happens, you might notice your baby starting to catnap where they didn't before during the day, and you might notice much more frequent wakes, sometimes more noticeable post midnight, and that's because your baby's deepest sleep is between the hours of 7 o'clock at night and 12 o'clock a.m. And when they're out of that deepest sleep, then we can see those 2 hourly wakes. So how do you get through the other side of this 4-month regression? Well, to get through it, we want to guide your little one to self-settling. And the reason for that is because what your baby has to fall asleep, they need to get back to sleep. So if you're feeding your baby or rocking your baby entirely to sleep at the start of their naps and bedtime, Then during their naps and in their overnight sleep, they'll wake looking for that same sleep association to get back to sleep. So with some gentle guidance and with your support, you can help your little one learn to self-settle, and that will get you through the other side of the 4-month sleep regression. That 4-month sleep regression hangs about until your little one can self-settle. So after the 4-month regression, the next regression that we usually have is around 6 months, usually between 6 and 7 months. This regression is slightly different again because this is actually about a nap transition. So when your little one is gearing up to drop their 3rd nap of the day. So the signs of this regression are that they might not settle at all for that last nap of the day. You might see complete resistance, and in which case they're sort of taking it out of your hands. They're saying, I don't want to sleep here, it's time for me to drop that nap. But there are other signs. Your baby might still quite readily take that 3rd nap of the day, but then start to resist bedtime. They might take that last nap of the day and they might start waking up 45 minutes after bedtime where they didn't before. Or they might start waking up more frequently overnight or earlier, slightly earlier for the day. These are all signs that your baby is ready to drop that 3rd nap. They don't have to be doing all of these things. So if, for example, your baby just starts waking 45 minutes after bedtime when they're 6.5 months old, if they're doing it for a good few days, it's probably time to think about dropping the 3rd nap. And what you can do to help your baby during that transition so they don't get overtired, because it can then be quite a stretch from lunch nap to bedtime, is extend the lunch nap out a little bit later so it's a slightly longer nap and bring bedtime forward slightly. The next nap following this nap transition is the 8-month regression. And this regression is different again in that this is a developmental regression. So usually with this one, you'll see signs of them learning new skills and new tricks. And the most common ones are starting to crawl, starting to pull up to stand and cruise around the furniture, and also quite a massive explosion in communication. So whether that's verbally or just really trying to interact with you a lot more. So you'll see these signs, and at the same time as you see them, you might see a deterioration in their sleep. The 8-month regression one quite often sees babies standing in their cot, flinging their pacifiers or their comforters out and just basically saying, Mum, I don't want to go to sleep, and doing the same thing during the night. This regression does pass. So once your little one has nailed those new skills, they have got the crawling down, they can stand really well themselves, they've got over this sort of verbal explosion in communication, things should settle down themselves. The best thing to do through the 8-month regression is try really hard not to have new sleep associations creep in that you don't want to keep. It can be really easy to establish new sleep associations. New habits can be picked up in a matter of 3 or 4 days usually. So if you were to start rocking your baby to sleep to get a nap in, the chances are that at the end of this regression, so even once they've nailed those new skills, they're still going to be wanting you to rock them back to sleep. So that's where approaching settling time and overnight wakes kind of methodically and use a settling method with them will help, so that you are not settling them all the way to sleep and those new sleep associations creep in. The next regression is much like the 6-month regression. So between 12 and 15 months, your little one is going to gear up to drop another nap. So we've got another nap transition. So this one is about dropping the morning nap and leaving us with one big restorative sleep at lunchtime. This can be a slightly trickier transition than the dropping of the afternoon nap, because the morning nap can be quite powerful. And if your little one's not waking up late enough to start their day, they can get overtired if they drop the morning nap too soon. So it's worth mentioning that around 12 months, they might just resist the morning nap, but it doesn't mean they're ready to drop it. So it's worthwhile persevering with it until they sort of give up the nap resistance like they do during a regression and they take that nap well again. It might mean you want to wake them up slightly earlier in the morning so that you get the morning nap in if they're not generally sleeping late enough to drop it and move through to one lunch nap. It can be a bit of trial and error, this one, and it can take between 2 and 6 weeks for things to settle down and for your little one's sleep to reconsolidate. The best things to do really with any regression is to have your little one on a schedule, and what that means is that it makes these transitions much easier because you're gradually building up to them. So for example, for this morning nap drop, the morning nap will be reducing gradually in your little one's first year, which means that it's slightly easier to drop it. So you're not going, for example, from a 1.5 hour morning nap to no nap at all and then lunch nap. And what you probably will find happens anyway around this age is if you were having a big morning nap, they then start to completely refuse another nap later on. And then that means that by the time they get to bedtime, they're overtired. So digressing a little bit here, but it does make things much easier if they're on a schedule that's working towards these nap transitions to make them as easy as possible. Around 2 years, we get another sleep regression. One cause of this regression can simply be that your little one's imagination has started to become really vivid and kick into life, and that can mean that they become a bit fearful. So the sleep environment that you had previously, like the really dark room, might not be working in your favour anymore. So a dim red nightlight can really help. You might find that that alone is all you need to do if they upset at nap time and from fearing the dark slightly now, where they didn't before. The other thing that happens around 2 years old is that your little one moves entirely away from babydom, completely into toddlerhood, and they become their own perfect little human. Together with this, they also start to change their outlook slightly on life. You are no longer the centre of their world. They are the centre of their world. And toddlers are not very good at regulating their feelings and their emotions. So you can see quite a lot of tantrums, quite a lot of nap and bedtime refusal. You might have overnight wakes where they start to really shout and scream for you where they didn't before. Your toddler is also becoming very much aware of the fact that other things are happening in the home when they are trying to sleep or they're meant to be sleeping. So at nap time and at bedtime, when you want them to sleep, they're thinking, hang on a minute, what's mum doing? What's dad doing? What's granny doing? What's sister doing? What's brother doing? I want to be a part of that. So there can be a strong resistance to settling through simply a fear of missing out. And toddlers also are really smart. But what they might not be able to do is communicate to you verbally how they're feeling and what they want to happen. So there can be frustration there as well on their part because they can't tell you what it is that they're thinking. Things that really help you get through the 2-year regression are being extremely patient, but keep high expectations and set your boundaries so that your little one understands what is acceptable at sleep time and what's not, and try really hard to stick to that because they will respond really well. Like I said before, sleep associations can be picked up in a matter of 3 or 4 days, and toddlers are just the same. So if you were to get into the habit of coming into their bedroom and cuddling them to sleep, or coming into the bedroom and taking them back downstairs for another play before you try again, they'll cotton on to that really quickly. So keep up the same routine that you've had, but double check a few things too. Make sure that their nap is not too early or too late in the day, so they're not under or overtired. They can be extremely busy little creatures, so they might still need a lunch nap between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, depending on when they're waking from the day, rather than trying that any later. Just because they're resisting the nap during the day doesn't mean that they're ready to drop it at 2 years old, and it doesn't mean that they're ready to have it much later. If you keep reinforcing the nap, it will come back and your toddler will go back to settling and sleeping well as they were before. If they start to settle well again and you notice there's still a big refusal at bedtime, check out the lunch nap length, make sure it's not too long, because around about 2 years old they're probably going to be starting to cut that down. So where you had a 2-hour nap before might need to be shortened slightly in order for them to settle well at bedtime again. So the main signs of a regression, just to wrap up here, are that you will see some sort of degradation in your little one settling and their sleep across the day and overnight. More wakes, resistance to going to sleep, etc. All those kinds of things. But bear in mind that your little one's sleep will progress and regress through their first 2 years on and off, and that is all totally natural and normal. Just because they're in a regression, although it might feel quite tough, it's not always a bad thing, because when they come through the other side of it, like they will in the 8-month regression, you'll see those wonderful new skills, like them crawling and cruising across the furniture, chatting away to you more than they ever did before, and these things are all great. So remember that you're working towards setting up and establishing good sleep habits for years to come. It's a good idea always to be on a routine and schedule. Of course, I would say that because I'm a sleep consultant, but I do firmly believe, as we all do at Little Ones, that when you're within a routine and you have your little one on a schedule, it's much easier to navigate your way through the regressions and get back on track. And of course, within our programs, we have settling methods to help you get through, and troubleshooting to help you through your day when things don't go to plan. So your whole schedule and routine is not always thrown out the window every single day. And hang in there and be confident that your little one will come through and out the other end of these regressions, because they will do, and so will you. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video today. I have really enjoyed chatting to you all. If you would like some more information on the individual sleep regressions, I've popped various different links in the description below for you. If you click on them, they'll take you directly to our website and to the blog articles within there. Those articles are all really in-depth and you should find them pretty helpful. If you also would like more information on our programs, the link directly to the programs section of our website is in the description too, www.littlewins.co. Finally, if you have not subscribed, please consider doing so, and if you hit the little bell button, you'll be notified when we release any new videos into our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.